Your feet are cold right now, not your whole body, just your feet, maybe your ankles. Your thermostat says 70 degrees, and it's not lying to you. And that's exactly the problem nobody's explained to you yet. I am Jeremiah Byler. I spent better than 30 years framing houses, mending drafty barns, and keeping old farmhouses livable through winters that would embarrass most modern furnaces. I learned this trade the way most men in my family learned it, standing next to my father with a hammer in my hand before I was tall enough to reach the top of a door frame without a stool. And in all those years and all those houses, I've walked into more cold bedrooms than I can rightly count. Folks call me when their heating bill doubles and their bedroom still feels like a root cellar. They've had the furnace serviced. They've caulked the windows. Some of them have even torn out perfectly good insulation because a salesman told them it was the problem. And 9 times out of 10, the room isn't cold because it's losing heat. It's cold because the air inside it never moves. That's the part nobody in the heating business wants getting around, because a room with dead air can eat $40, $50 a month in wasted heat, and the fixed costs less than a large pizza. The modern heating industry sells you on one idea, and one idea only: more heat in. Bigger furnace, smarter thermostat, space heater running all night at 11 cents a kilowatt hour, zone heating systems that cost thousands to install. None of that fixes what's actually wrong in half these rooms, because the problem was never a shortage of heat. It was a shortage of movement. A furnace company doesn't make money teaching you to move air around for free. A space heater manufacturer doesn't sell you a $20 fan when they can sell you a $200 heater instead. Trust me on this. I've seen families spend $600 a winter on space heaters trying to fight a problem that a folded piece of cardboard could have solved. I had a woman 2 winters back, lived alone out past the county line, tell me she'd spent close to $900 across 2 winters on portable heaters for a single upstairs bedroom before anyone thought to ask why the room felt cold to begin with, instead of just throwing more heat at it. So let's talk about why a room actually goes cold, the real mechanism, not the marketing version. Because once you understand this, you'll never look at a cold room the same way again. Warm air rises. Every child learns that. But what nobody tells you is what happens after it rises. It hits the ceiling, spreads out, cools as it touches the colder surface, and sinks right back down along the walls, especially near windows and any exterior wall, where the glass or the siding is pulling heat out of that air faster than anywhere else in the room. That falling cold air pools along the floor. It has nowhere to go, because most rooms, especially old farmhouse rooms, but plenty of modern ones too, have almost no natural cross circulation. So you end up with warm air stacked up near the ceiling, doing you no good at all, and a lake of cold air sitting at ankle height, which is exactly where you're sitting, sleeping, and living. Your thermostat, mounted at chest height on the wall, reads a perfectly reasonable 70 degrees, and meanwhile your feet are sitting in 58-degree air. So the furnace never even kicks on the way it should because it thinks the room is warm. The English call this temperature stratification. I call it a room that forgot how to breathe. I want you to picture it the way I picture it when I walk into one of these rooms. Imagine a swimming pool, except instead of water, it's cold air, and it's sitting about 18 inches deep across your entire floor. You can't see it, but your body knows it's there the second you step out of bed in the morning. That layer doesn't move on its own, it just sits, and the warm air above it, up near the ceiling where nobody lives, just sits too, trapped, doing absolutely nothing for the people in the room. 2 layers of air stacked on top of each other, never mixing, never doing their job, and the thermostat sitting right in the middle, blind to both of them, telling the furnace everything's just fine. The old world fix for this isn't insulation, and it isn't heat, it's airflow, specifically forcing that ceiling level warm air back down into the room without adding a single new degree of heat. My grandfather did this with nothing more than a small fan, a length of twine, and the good sense to point that fan the right direction, which is the part almost everybody gets backwards. He didn't have the words temperature stratification. Nobody in his generation did. He just called it waking the air up, and he did it in every farmhouse bedroom, every barn office, every cold pantry on our property, decades before anybody in the modern heating trade put a name to what he was doing. Here's exactly how it's done, materials and all. You'll need one small oscillating or box fan if you don't already own one. A basic model runs about $18 to $25 at any hardware or general store. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need a smart fan. You don't need one with a remote control or an app. The cheapest one on the shelf does this job just as well as the expensive one. You'll need a step ladder, and if your ceilings are higher than 8 feet, a bit of sturdy string or twine, maybe $2 worth, to help you gauge airflow direction before you commit to a spot. On a cold day, stand in the room and hold a lit match or a stick of incense near the ceiling in the corner farthest from your heat source, furnace vent, radiator, wood stove, whatever's warming that room. Watch which way the smoke bends. That tells you where the warm air is collecting and stalling. Give it a full minute in each corner if you need to. Most rooms have one obvious spot, usually a corner opposite the vent or a corner behind a piece of furniture that's blocking natural movement. Then place your fan on the floor, not on a shelf, not on a dresser, on the floor, angled so it points upward at roughly a 45-degree angle toward that corner where the warm air is stalling. This is the part folks get backwards 9 times out of 10. They put the fan up high thinking it'll push heat down. Wrong. You want the fan low, pushing room temperature or slightly cool air upward into that stalled warm air pocket, which forces the warm air to circulate down and outward instead of just sitting there uselessly against the ceiling. Think of it like stirring a pot from the bottom instead of the top. You're not adding anything new to the pot. You're just finally getting everything in it moving together. Run that fan on its lowest speed, continuously, for the coldest stretch of the day. For most households, that's early morning and again in the evening, roughly 4 to 6 hours total. You are not trying to feel a breeze. If you feel wind on your skin, you've got it too strong. You want barely perceptible movement. That's what pulls the stratified layers apart. Most modern box fans have 3 speeds. You want the lowest one, and if yours only has low, medium, high, low is still almost always more than enough for a bedroom size space. And this is the one that surprises people most. Crack open the bedroom door, even just 3 or 4 inches if it's been closed. A fully sealed room with the door and windows shut has nowhere for that circulated air to equalize with the rest of the house, and it'll just re stratify within the hour. A few inches of gap lets the whole house share the load instead of one small fan fighting a sealed box. I've had folks tell me they were nervous about heat escaping through that gap. It doesn't escape, it equalizes. And equalized air holds its temperature far better than stratified air ever will. Total cost for that whole fix under $25 one time, and it runs you maybe 2 3 cents a day in electricity to operate that fan on low. Compare that to a space heater, which the Department of Energy itself will tell you can cost $1.50 to $2 a day to run continuously in a single room. Over a winter, that's the difference between $25 spent once and $250, $300 spent every single season for a fix that never actually addressed why the room was cold in the first place. Run those numbers over 5 winters, and you're looking at over $1,000 spent chasing a problem a $20 fan could have solved the very first year. Now, here's the secondary trick, the one my wife's mother taught me, and it cost you nothing but an old wool blanket or a heavy curtain you likely already own. Any exterior wall, especially behind a headboard or a couch, is quietly pulling heat out of your room around the clock, even with good insulation, simply because it's the coldest surface in contact with your warm air. Hang a heavy blanket or thick curtain over that wall, even just for the worst weeks of winter. It doesn't need to touch the floor or seal like a proper drape. It just needs enough thickness to break that direct contact between warm room air and cold wall surface. Combined with the fan trick, most folks notice the room holds heat 2, sometimes 3 hours longer after the furnace cycles off. My wife's mother did this in every bedroom of her farmhouse, hung old quilts on nails along the coldest walls every November, and took them down every March, and swore up and down it saved more on heat than anything else they did to that house. Understand what's really at stake here. This isn't just about comfort, though comfort matters plenty on a January night when your feet hit a cold floor at 5 in the morning. It's about the fact that heating and cooling account for close to half the average household's energy bill, according to the Department of Energy's own numbers, and a shocking share of that is wasted heat that never actually made it to where people live in the room, floor level, not ceiling level. The modern approach sells bigger, more expensive equipment to solve what is, in most rooms, a $25 airflow problem. That's the uneasy part. That's the part worth sitting with. Somebody, somewhere, is getting rich selling you a bigger version of the wrong solution year after year, while the actual fix sits in a hardware store aisle for less than the cost of a dinner out. So here's what I want you to do this weekend, in order. Pick your coldest room and do the smoke test near the ceiling to find where warm air is stalling. Buy or dig out a small fan, $18 to $25 if you don't have one. Set it on the floor, angled up at 45 degrees toward that stalled corner lowest speed. Run it 4 to 6 hours during your coldest stretch of day and crack the door a few inches while it runs, and hang a heavy blanket over your coldest exterior wall for the season if you've got one to spare. To those 5 things, and give it 3 days before you touch the thermostat again. Most folks tell me they never do. They call me back 3 days later, not to ask what else they should try, but just to tell me the room finally feels like it belongs to them again. Next time, I want to walk you through the trick my father used to keep a barn's water trough from freezing solid without a single electric heater running. Cost him about $4 a season, and it still baffles half the English who hear about it. Until then, if you tried this fan trick tonight, tell me in the comments how many hours it took before you noticed the difference. I read every one of them.